this administration isn't just targeting the laws that protect us. They're targeting the very idea that we are all worthy of protection. For them, dignity isn't something you're born with, but something you measure by your net worth, your celebrity, your headlines, your crowd size. Not to mention the gender of your spouse, the country of your birth, the color of your skin, the God of your prayers.
Hello humans, welcome back to the Quote of the Day Slackline broadcast. You are listening to The Boss.
The Boss is coming! That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
And bringing us into this episode was a clip from Joe Kennedy's response to the President's State of the Union address from last night. Joe Kennedy is a Republican congressman from Massachusetts, and he gave a very great speech. That's just part of it. It's about 13 minutes long. You can check it out on YouTube. Very, very interesting. I never really knew who Joe Kennedy was before tonight, and surprised to see such a young person actually out responding to the president. He actually, like, man, I don't know how old he was, but he looked like a teenager, especially in contrast to Donald Trump. So kind of a small redheaded dude, looks almost exactly like Robert F. Kennedy, actually. I'm not sure where along the line he meets, but anyways, we are coming at you again from Vancouver in Canada, and again talking some U.S. politics. I am American, for those of you who don't know. But more than that, I do want to get into some other topics for sure. Basically anything else. But this was the State of the Union, so it's kind of tough to ignore that. So we'll go along with that for today. And who is bringing us our quote today, Greg? Our quote comes from Hippy Stew's Combinable protest jacket. Make an unbreakable wall of people by zipping your coats together arm by arm thanks to Hippy Stew's Combinable protest jacket. That is a new product out there. I guess the arms zip together so marchers can form an impenetrable wall of protesters. So you can build a wall while you protest the wall. And they bring us our quote today from one Joe Kennedy. From that same speech, near the end of it, he says this very inspirational words: "Bullies may land a punch, they may leave a mark, but they have never, not once, in the history of our United States, managed to match the strength and spirit of a people united in defense of their future." Again, that is Congressman Joe Kennedy in response to the President's State of the Union address. And it's really that last little bit that really stood out to me. I was specifically kind of diving through his speech for something to respond to, and this is one that really stuck out. Just the strength and spirit of a people united in defense of their future. Seemed like really strong words to me as an allusion to a growing generation of people that are not okay with the type of behavior that they are seeing, not only from President Trump himself, but from all of these high-level people that have been in power for a long, long time, whether it's a Me Too movement or whether it is cracking down on corruption in government and standing up for environmental rights and civil rights and all the things that we put under the umbrella of progressive, that it seems a dying generation of people are fighting against, and we're seeing that every day with every news cycle that shows pretty much everything that's happening, particularly in the U.S. But it's not just there. Like, there are these right-wing movements happening all over the world, including in our own country, in Canada. And it's because somebody like Trump has risen to power and has given a platform for this type of rhetoric to be quote unquote normalized, or just allowed to exist in public discourse and not be shouted down right away as baseless, racist, homophobic, sexist rhetoric, however you want to define pretty much anything that he says. And the larger thing is, the cause of Donald Trump, again, this group of people that feels their values just getting kind of pulled away from them. As flawed as those values were in a lot of ways, it's what those people, know and grew up with. And so some people don't react great to change, and some people don't necessarily know or think about the long-term ramifications of their actions, the long-term ramifications of voting in a president like Donald Trump, just to spite the liberals or something like that. When this person could do damage that sets back not just their country, but nations around the world back decades, as far as civil liberties go, and as far as just basic human decency and public discourse goes. And so as more and more of these old-timey values kind of get attacked or changed, the angrier and more violent and more fervent this kind of what is a minority of people, it gets them all riled up and gets them motivated and gets them active. But we're seeing the opposite response now, of people like myself and people, young people all over the world getting politically active because they recognize a gross flaw in not just politics, but basically kind of how our whole system is working, and are pushing against it. And another part from his speech, from Joe Kennedy's speech, mentioned a girl with a poster held while on her mother's shoulders at a march that said, "Build a wall, my generation will tear it down." And I think that's true, like figuratively or literally. Like, you build a wall between the borders of Mexico, and you spend for maximum 8 years building it, it's gonna get torn down. Like, it's inevitable. It's fucking inevitable that it's gonna get torn down. And the figurative walls, the walls that are blocking us from having real discussions, the walls that are dividing us and not allowing for bipartisan agreements, because everybody's digging into the sand in their own way and not allowing themselves to move. It's tough because you get to a point where you can't move anymore, where there is no more placating, there is no more appeasement of especially hateful rhetoric from the highest office in your land, and what we consider the leader of the free world, quote unquote. What other discourse is there in the face of complete disregard for the systems that we put in place specifically to avoid stuff like violence? What happens when somebody is ignoring them, or when entire institutions, entire economic movers, are economic impactors, are specifically trying to disregard or undermine these systems. At what point do you have to draw a line in the sand and say, no, this is where it stops? And if they keep trying to push over that line, there has to be a stop. There has to be a physical force that says no at this point. The Republicans, the conservatives, the right side, whatever you want to call it, whatever umbrella you want to put it under, there's been a lot of crying, especially during the last few years of Obama's administration, and just this overall sort of decade of progressivism. A term that conservatives like to throw out there was class warfare. This kind of boogeyman that they like to throw out to scare average people into thinking that there's somebody that is in a class below them that is trying to usurp their position and is trying to maliciously take over your life, or maliciously cut your wealth down or whatever, and they do it so that everybody considers themselves part of this group of people that is being attacked, that is being looked at as a group that needs to have its wealth divided, when they're not in that class. They're the people that will benefit from that type of division, from that type of redistribution. And so you're kind of getting into the realm of revolution, and revolutions of the past. Some of them have been non-violent, but the vast majority of them have been violent in some way, shape, or form. And I think it's kind of arrogant to assume that we're beyond that now somehow. There's still stuff like this going on all over the world, and we're not evolved any higher than any of these people. It's just a different way of life that we've grown up in. This stuff is still going on all over the place. A friend of mine mentioned, we were chatting about a similar thing, and he mentioned how there needs to be a return of the guillotine, public executions for the people at the top of the pyramid scheme, and the people working to cheat the system. And I kind of laugh and I nod and I shrug, and the point is that people need to see these tycoons fall, that people need to see justice be done to powerful people that have very obviously rigged the game in their favor and done a lot of illegal things and underhanded things, and at the very best amoral things along the way. There's an argument to be made that making a public example of people like that can curtail that behavior in the future. Obviously, that's a fascist way to look at it. But like I said, I mean, there's certain times, and there's been certain times in history, and there will be certain times in history again, hopefully, if history continues, when people have to be immovable, when people have to say enough and stop putting up with crazy bullshit from corrupt leaders and corrupt business tycoons and people being in everybody else's pocket, meanwhile cheating 99% of the entire population again and again and again, and engaging in campaigns of mass manipulation to try to convince people and successfully convince people of voting against themselves, of voting for things that don't help them, of voting for cuts to legislation that actually are benefits to themselves and to their families. So, maybe that's where we'll leave it for today. That, again, is a quote from Congressman Joe Kennedy from the state of Massachusetts. The quote is, "Bullies may land a punch, They may leave a mark, but they have never, not once, in the history of our United States, managed to match the strength and spirit of a people united in defense of their future. That again, Congressman Joe Kennedy from Massachusetts giving us that quote. And that is brought to us today by Hippy Stew's Combinable protest jacket. Make an unbreakable wall of people by zipping your coats together arm by arm with Hippy Stew's Combinable protest jacket. Those are available online and at stores everywhere now. That is it for the Slackline Quote of the Day broadcast. Thanks again to the Crooked Spies for lending us their music today. Make sure you're following the podcast on Instagram at the.slack.line, on Twitter at slackline_radio, on YouTube and iTunes at the Slackline Podcast. You have been listening to The Boss.
The boss is coming! That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
And we are out. We will be back again with another quote for you tomorrow. Happy Wednesday, and enjoy the second half of your week.
Hey mama, hey mama, hey, hey mama, I've seen you around, messing with all the poor boys in this town. Hey mama, hey mama, hey, you burn this whole place down just to wear the crown.